This is the Palin Update on SaraNet Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla.
Not additional gun control measures to be supported. No, I don't believe that. Bottom line, the bad guys aren't going to follow the laws that are on the books today. They're not going to follow any new laws that are put on the books either.
Recently, a sheriff in Wisconsin was seemingly doing what he was supposed to do, providing the community with safety tips and options to protect themselves and their families. Among those options, owning a firearm and using it with respect. Well, that sent the left over the cliff. But this American patriot is not backing down. Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke is here today. American Grizzlies United is doing its part to stand up for our Second Amendment. We'll take a look at the latest initiatives. She rocked the house last year, so it's no wonder they want her back. Sarah Palin will speak at CPAC 2013. Also, Governor Palin reflects on President's Day and tracks Todd and the Iron Dog. Plus, our latest edition of Steel Resolve with Sarah Steelman is straight ahead. First, he put out an announcement to help the public, and he was met with anger and disdain from left-wing groups, the mayor of Milwaukee, and others who are inexplicably for the Washington gun grab. Luckily, he doesn't answer to special interest groups or politicians. He works for the people. And today, Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke is on the Palin Update on SaraNet Radio. Sheriff Clarke, a pleasure to have you here, sir.
It's my pleasure, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
And first off, thank you for what you do for protecting citizens each and every day. Your work in law enforcement is so appreciated. On behalf of my family, I'm really grateful for your service.
Well, I appreciate it. I feel truly blessed that the people of Milwaukee County have elected me 3 times to assist them, to be their partner in public safety here in Milwaukee County, and it's a pleasure to serve.
Now, sir, let's start with what got all the press in the first place. Shockingly, a simple PSA released by you recently caused a stir among anti-gun groups and media types. First, can you tell us and tell our listeners the basics? What was in the ad?
Well, it was a personal conversation with the people of Milwaukee County, and it was the result of some things that are going on in terms of public safety or lack thereof, citizens coming under attack, longer and longer response times for the police to show up. For instance, it takes 52 minutes for the police to show up to a burglary, 56 minutes on average to show up to a sexual assault. So imagine that a woman gets raped, she's got to wait an hour for the police to show up, and then as long as an hour and 2 minutes on average for something like the sound of gunshots, and 18 minutes for an armed robbery. So I'm looking at these things going on, and I said, you know what we're doing here with this 911 system in certain situations, it's not going to work for people. So I wanted to remind people that personal safety is an individual responsibility, but they have to be prepared for these situations. You can't roll up on a situation, what I like to say, when the wolf's at the door, someone's breaking into your home, or you're on the street and somebody sticks a gun to your head. That's not the time to say, well, what do I do? 2 things have gone on in the state of Wisconsin over the last 18 months that I think are a force multiplier for law-abiding citizens. The first one is Castle Doctrine, which allows people to use force up to including deadly force if an intruder comes in their home. And the second is the Personal Protection Act, which allows people, law-abiding people, to get a permit, apply for a permit, and then go armed with a concealed weapon to be able to defend themselves. So I'm trying to leverage those 2 things and tell people, hey, look, you can do what you want. It's really your call. Because it's not up to me, Kevin, to tell law-abiding citizens when and how they can defend themselves. And I told them, I want to be your partner, but if you're going to partner with me, you got to be ready.
Now, Sheriff, to me, that sounds like, well, exactly what a sheriff should be doing, giving the public options and tips on keeping safe, not demanding you choose one way or the other. Did you ever in a million years imagine when you recorded this that anything like this firestorm would have come from it?
Not at all. I knew there'd be some blowback from the left and from anti-gun people here in Milwaukee County, but this thing went nationwide, viral, and support was tremendous. But at the same time, the blowback came nationally, from the left. It was a message grounded in common sense, and they knew it would resonate with law-abiding people, and they didn't want that to happen. And so what they did was they sent out, first of all, to destroy the message, and then secondly, to destroy the messenger if the first one didn't work, and then try to do both at the same time. So that I'm prepared for. I've been dealing with that for the last 10 years since I've been the sheriff. An onslaught from the left because of my positions on protecting citizens, encouraging, empowering citizens to play a role in their own safety, and also because of my strong stance on, I'm hard on crime, and then you're right, that's what sheriffs and chiefs are supposed to do. But when you start talking about things like I did, hey, defend yourself, protect yourself, this is your responsibility. The status claim, no, that's the government's responsibility. And I'm just here to say that the police are not the front line in a person's personal security. The citizen is. We're a response agency. That's what we were designed to be. Yeah, we'd like to be there sooner than we can, but there are certain things going on in Milwaukee. For instance, 1,500 Milwaukee police officers were furloughed 3 days each this year, so that's 4,500 fewer officer hours on the street to answer calls for service. And I talked, earlier about the delay in response time, so you have even fewer officers while the calls continue to come in. Also, was reported Friday there was a 9.4% increase in violent crime in the city of Milwaukee last year, a 33% increase in aggravated assaults. So, you look at those things, and it just stands to reason that you got to come up with a new formula for those situations. And I didn't ask anybody, you probably heard the ad, I didn't ask anybody to go out in the police's streets. I talked about your personal safety, which is an individual responsibility. I like empowering citizens, Kevin. I trust law-abiding citizens. I trust armed law-abiding citizens. And what I said is grounded in the law here in Wisconsin. It's a fundamental concept here in the United States. And for anybody in America that doesn't see personal security being an individual responsibility, that's a foreign concept to me.
And one thing you said that I really thought was well put, you said, I'm not afraid of law-abiding citizens with a gun, I'm afraid of the criminal with a gun, and soft on crime prosecutors and judges.
That's it. And there was a case here in Milwaukee just last week where an individual, career criminal, was initially arrested for 14 felonies in a crime spree. He was arrested. He's put out on low bail. While out on bail, he arms himself again. He's a convicted felon, so he's not supposed to have a firearm to begin with. He arms himself again while out on bail and commits another 17 felonies, including taking people's car at gunpoint. He pushed a lady down, stuck a gun to her head, took her car. He took another man hostage, put him in his car, and made him drive to an ATM machine and tried to get him to draw money out. So it's those situations where an individual has decisions to make. And then I said in the ad, you can beg for mercy if you want. I'm not going to tell you not to. You can say, hey, please, Mr. Felon, you've demonstrated that you will use that firearm if need be. Please have mercy on me. And I got a family, I've got a wife and kids. Or you can hide under the bed if an intruder breaks in. I'm not saying don't do that. I say that in the ad. But then I say, or you can fight back. And I just think it's time to change this equation and start giving the crooks and the bad guys something else to think about. And that something else is there are 155,000 people in the state of Wisconsin that have permits to carry concealed weapons that might give them a different response. Several weeks ago, we had an off-duty Milwaukee police officer who was robbed at gunpoint on the street. And instead of reaching for his wallet, he reached for his firearm, and he blasted the guy out of his shoes. Now, that ability should be reachable to any citizen, not just off-duty police officers. So those are the types of things that I'm talking about. But, Kevin, as I indicated, you have to be prepared mentally for these situations. You have to be in a state of hypervigilance like a cop, like this off-duty cop was. He's off-duty, but he still has that hypervigilance, says, oh, you want my wallet? Yeah, let me get it. And then he produces his firearm, and he defends himself. So I'm trying to prepare this community here for these situations, which are becoming more and more prevalent. And, I want to partner with people. I don't tell people, hey, just call 911 and wait for me to get there. We will get there, but it may take some time. And in the interim, in these exigent situations where, like I said, you're being jacked or an intruder's breaking into your home, your wife and kids are sleeping in the bedrooms, you got to have a plan, and if you have the tools, which Wisconsin now has given people, then you got to be prepared to use them, because it's a hard thing to do, to point a gun at another human being and pull the trigger. It's easier for the bad guy once they've done it. Once they've done it, it becomes easy. But for the average law-abiding human being, that's a tough thing to do. So I want them to think about this and to to have some sort of plan. And if you're in that situation, and gosh darn it, if it's you, your kids, your wife, your kids, and it's that bad guy, that's the guy that's got to lose.
And your statements about waiting for 911, it's just simply the facts. I mean, cops aren't magicians. They can't just instantly appear, so you have a choice, like you said, to decide to fight back or not. What about these other officials, especially the mayor of Milwaukee, bad-mouthing your message? It looks like you're giving people valuable information, while the mayor and others seem to be kowtowing to the press and lobby groups. The Milwaukee police chief joined the parade, too, against this?
Yeah, well, the chief, he works for the mayor. I'm independently elected by the voters, the residents of Milwaukee County. I'm on their side. I work for them. I answer to them. I don't answer to another politician like the chief. But as for Barrett, Mayor Barrett, Mayor Barrett several years ago found out what life is like for the average citizen when he was without his security staff, and he was out enjoying an afternoon with his family, and on the street he intervened in a domestic dispute. And the suspect took a tire iron and beat him within inches of his life. He found out that day what the average a law-abiding citizen has to deal with on an ongoing basis. And I said this about the mayor at that time, and I said, and I continue to say it, if he had had a gun and a plan, I bet we would have had a different outcome. But other than that, now he has the security bubble. He lives life in a bubble. He has the security staff of taxpayer-paid for police officers, and he should have that. I'm not, trying to take that away from him. But everybody doesn't have that. And I would like to think that after that beating, that he'd be a little more sensitive to the plight of everyday people, like the woman several weeks ago who got pushed down and had a gun stuck to her head and had her car taken. I like to think that he'd be a little more sensitive to people in that situation, but apparently he's not. He's not. His ideology overrides common sense.
And, Sheriff, you're a Milwaukee guy, right? You care very much about that city from the heart.
I was born here, bred here, raised here, educated here, 35 years in law enforcement, 24 years with the Milwaukee Police Department before I became the sheriff. And I love this town, and I want better for it. I want a safer community. I want safer schools, safer streets. And I want to use that as a force multiplier to aggressively go after the crooks in this city.
How does it make you feel when politicians use tragedies like the Sandy Hook shooting to politicize well-intentioned initiatives like yours?
Well, I think it's sad, but it's nothing new. This gun control issue has been under the surface as far as the left's concerned for a long time now, and then they seize on an opportunity like this. It had nothing to do with what we're talking about in terms of street violence. Those things are anomaly. They're tragedies, no doubt about it. Aurora, Colorado, Virginia Tech, Northern Illinois, I believe University had the same type of slaughter. But then they mask themselves around things like that, and they're talking about, they rephrase this thing, because this is one of the tricks they use. They don't call it gun control, they call it violence reduction. But, Kevin, they're not interested in violence reduction, because the violence that goes on a daily basis in the streets of this city, in Milwaukee, is not committed with an assault a rifle. It's not committed with high-capacity magazines. It's not committed with ammo bought over the Internet. They're masking this to slowly wear away and chip away at law-abiding people's right under the Second Amendment to possess and own firearms. And I think it's a tragedy, because there are things that we can do. And one of the things that we can do is when we get these individuals, like the guy I talked about who committed 14 robberies, arrested, let out on low bail to commit 17 more robberies, when we put those kind of people away for long periods of time or attach increased bails, we can initiate policies like that. But it's the same people, like Mayor Barrett, who's against any sort of long-term confinement and the tough-on-crime sort of thing. So he and others, they talk out of both sides of their mouth. Because on one, they say, hey, we got to do something about gun violence. But then when we catch these individuals, and I haven't even talked about the straw purchases that I looked into, that I released information on last week, But when we do have the opportunity to really impact on things going on a daily basis, not the outliers and not the anomalies, although they are tragedy, the left doesn't want anything to do with it. They start talking about, alternatives to incarceration, second chance programs for the people to go out and reoffend again. Now, I looked into a 12-year history in the prosecutor's office in Milwaukee County on straw purchase. And you know what those are, when someone buys a firearm for someone else who can't possess one. There have only been 43 cases, Kevin, in 12 years that have been brought to the district attorney's office for straw purchase. There's only a 46% conviction rate. And the sentences range from fines to probation, and only 3 individuals went to prison. One went to prison for 18 months, one went to prison for 2 years, and one went to prison for 2.5. But the kicker in all that, Kevin, is that is a 10-year felony, a 10-year maximum prison sentence. And all we got out of 43 cases was 3 people going to prison for 2.5 and less than that years out of a 10-year felony. And so I point that out because that's the hypocrisy of the left. I read where Chief Flynn said last week, we need to do something about straw purchases. He said, we need to send a message to people that if they're going to buy a firearm for someone who can't legally possess one, that they need to go to jail. You notice he didn't say prison, because there's a difference between a county jail and a prison. And the other thing that's fascinating about Chief Ed Flynn, Kevin, is he will not join me. He will not stand arm in arm with me as I call for harsher penalties, punishment, for people who go out and use a firearm to commit a felony.
It's amazing, but like you said, amazing but not surprising when we see this track record. Sheriff Sarah Palin has stood steadfast by her Second Amendment. Do you appreciate her outspokenness on the topic? You aren't afraid to speak your mind either.
I do. I admire her. I really do. From the time she got into this real public life, I know she was the governor of Alaska. And I read her book, Going Rogue, and I'll tell you what a fascinating read. I find her to be an inspiration. Her courage, some of the things that she'd gone through, and how she had to stand tall and stand fast with all the blowback that she had to put up with, even before becoming the vice presidential nominee 2 elections ago, but even since then. And so I use her as a source of inspiration. If you get the chance, please pass on my well wishes and thank her as well for her service to her country.
And how about Wayne LaPierre of the NRA saying the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun? He got ripped for that. It's again a statement that I hear and says, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, it's true. And, the left likes to talk about, and the anti-gun folks, they like to talk about, and I heard the president say it, a common sense approach to firearm ownership. No, it's not. It's a common assault on the Second Amendment. They don't have the courage to say it because they know it doesn't poll well with the American public. The Second Amendment is very clear. Now, I realize it's not absolute, but I would say, and I have said this to people who want to continue to chip away at the Second Amendment, I'll be willing to sit down and have a conversation about stripping away aspects of the Second Amendment when they're willing to sit down with me and have a conversation about stripping aspects of the First Amendment, which I'm not for either. And that's how I look at it. And the reason, and what I mean by that is the Second Amendment to me, and I think to a lot of other Americans, Kevin, is as sacred as the First Amendment. It said, the first says Congress shall make no law. It's very clear. Now, we know there are limitations to that. But the Second Amendment says the right of the people, to own a firearm, the well-regulated militia and all that. And it says at the end, and this is the key part at the end, it says, shall not be infringed. Now, we have, I think we got enough. We've done enough chipping away and shaving away at the Second Amendment. So I think we need to take the laws that are on the books, like the straw purchases, like the felon in possession of firearms, okay, and some of these other things that we are not taking advantage of, and we need to focus on those and figure out how can we leverage the laws we have so that we can leave people alone, and we can leave the Second Amendment alone, and we can leave law-abiding people to be able to exercise their Second Amendment right without being further infringed by the government.
And, they use kids a lot, too. They exploit kids, try to tug at the heartstrings of those who may not know what's going on or use the Sandy Hook situation. And I got to tell you, the NRA has great programs there, too, and I know a lot of local offices do as well. My daughter's very young, and she already knows through one of the NRA comics that if you see a gun, you don't touch it. You tell a grown-up. I mean, it's a very simple message early on. And on a personal note to you, sir, I host a TV show with one of your colleagues, a sheriff in Pennsylvania. The program is Delaware County's Most Wanted. And I've seen the inner workings of a sheriff's office. You people are heroes every day. And if you don't know it from the Piers Morgan types and the anti-gun bureaucrats, you are appreciated, and I want you to know that from us here.
Well, I'm humbled by that, Kevin. I really am.
Well, thank you, Sheriff, and we appreciate you coming on. You're welcome here anytime, and good luck with everything, and the best to you and your city.
Thanks for helping me fight the fight.
You can see what Sheriff Clarke is up to and get all the latest Sheriff's Office info at mkesheriff.org. Sarah Palin and Sheriff Clarke are fighting for our Second Amendment rights, and so is American Grizzlies United. The group posted some powerful and important messages this week, piggybacking this past weekend's Day of Resistance. AGU is instituting the Make 5 Phone Calls for Freedom project, where you, the citizen, can make 5 calls to the players in Washington that are currently toying with our precious gun rights. Go to AmericanGrizzlies.com as soon as possible to find out how to make these vital phone calls. And there's other ways to help, too. AGU has a great list of organizations that suggest ways you can take a stand for your Second Amendment rights. To see them, just head to AmericanGrizzlies.com. Remember, guns don't kill people. Gun control kills people. Stand up and speak out. AmericanGrizzlies.com. Also, if you attended a Day of Resistance rally this past weekend, or if you have attended or will attend any pro-Second Amendment rally, AGU wants to see your pictures. You can send pictures of your events to thomas@americangrizzlies.com. Todd Palin embarked on another Iron Dog adventure this past week, and Sarah Palin was there, along with a throng of family and friends, to see him off, and Todd did it with class. His snow machine read, "Chris Kyle, American Warrior, R.I.P." on the front. In addition to rooting for Team 11 of Todd Palin and Scott Davis, Sarah Palin was also officially added to the CPAC roster. She will speak at noon on Saturday, March 16th at the big event in Maryland. Last year, the governor was the keynote speaker and delivered one of the most raucous, well-received political speeches you could ever hope to hear. We look forward to see what she has in store for us next month. This past week was President's Day, and Sarah Palin, of course, observed the day with patriotism and class. She posted some comments which included the following: "It should be considered an honor to celebrate President's Day, particularly with the understanding that President George Washington is at the heart of this patriotic observance. Take a minute today to reflect on those who came before us and laid the foundation that was to be the solid rock on which future generations were built. Then be inspired to fight for the restoration of all that made America a shining light in the world. Freedom isn't free. Be willing to fight for it." The governor also posted a picture saying the Pledge of Allegiance next to the brick tombs of President and Mrs. Washington on the Mount Vernon estate. To read her complete commentary and see the picture, just go to Sarah Palin's Facebook page. Now, our weekly commentary, Steel Resolve. Here's Sarah Steelman.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm sure that you all know there is a special election going on here in Missouri for the 8th Congressional Representative. I'm happy to report that Jason Smith, the Republican nominee for the seat vacated by Joanne Emerson, is a steadfast conservative. He's a young man who is currently serving as my state representative and understands that Washington is broken and dysfunctional. Smith knows that government has a spending problem, not a revenue problem. He has fought against both federal and state regulations that are interfering with our farmers and ranchers' ability to raise crops and cattle. He has fought for property rights of landowners, and he will stand strong against the overreach of the EPA in every facet of agriculture and business. Most importantly, Jason Smith understands that it is freedom that has made America the greatest and most prosperous country in the world. He knows that freedom is a value we hold dear. The freedom allows us to dream our own dreams and pursue our own definition of happiness, no matter what it is. He knows that our Constitution protects our natural rights given to us by God, and that no government can take those away from us. And most importantly, he will fight to protect our freedoms. Jason Smith will take good Missouri common sense to Washington. He will help fix what is broken. Check out his website at electjasonsmith.com and support him financially, because it is critical that we send conservatives like Jason Smith to Congress. Thank you. This is Sarah Steelman for SarahNet Radio.
Tune in again next week for another segment of Steel Resolve right here on the Palin Update. And don't forget, the Palin Update, including Steel Resolve, is now on demand and available for download. So just head to SarahNetRadio.net, pick the show you want to hear, and you can listen anywhere, anytime. Well, that'll just about do it for this edition of the Palin Update on SarahNet Radio. Visit SarahNetRadio.net for continuing coverage of Governor Palin. Also, follow along on Twitter at SarahNet Radio, at Kevin Scholla, and at Sarah_Steelman. We are on Facebook, too, so be sure to like SarahNet Radio. And Palin Patriots, a new series of articles written by Palinistas, is available at SarahNet.net. Some great stuff from Bader Carmount, Dan Bongino, and Martha Zoller thus far. For some common sense perspective, check out Palin Patriots at SarahNet.net. And I'm doing some writing for Breitbart News. Just go to Breitbart.com and search Kevin Scholla. I want to thank Sarah Steelman and everyone here at SarahNet Radio. Thanks to Sheriff David Clarke. And thank you for listening today. Please be sure to join us again next time for another edition of the Palin Update. I'm Kevin Scholla. Have a pleasant day.